Eli was out of time. The Crown Cartel had the biker's son on his knees in the gravel, a gun pressed to his temple. Eli's own hands were empty, but he had one secret left, a name he'd sworn never to speak. He shouted it into the night. The gunman froze. The radio on his belt crackled to life with a single, furious command. Stand down. 3 days later, 900 Steel Angels motorcycles formed a silent circle around Eli. Their leader stepped forward, his eyes not on the cartel, but on the runaway who knew too much. Before we continue, take a moment to like this video, hit that subscribe button, and comment where you're watching from. It helps stories like this reach more people. Now, let's enjoy the story together. The name was a ghost, and shouting it felt like tearing a scar open. Muddick! It ripped from Eli's raw throat and hung in the cold air of the gravel lot. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. The Crown gunman, Reyes, kept the barrel of his pistol pressed to the trembling boy's temple. Leo, the son of Steel Angel's President Razor, squeezed his eyes shut, a tear tracing through the grime on his cheek. Then Reyes's eyes flickered, a tiny crack in his stone-cold composure. The radio clipped to his belt erupted with a burst of static so loud it made everyone jump. A voice, tight with controlled fury, snapped through the speaker. Stand down. Now. The order was absolute. Reyes's arm lowered slowly, the gun drifting away from Leo's skull. He took one deliberate step back, his gaze locking onto Eli with a mixture of confusion and dawning suspicion. Who was this scrap of a runaway that a single name could halt a Crown execution? Eli's heart was a frantic drum against his ribs. He hadn't known if it would work. He only knew that Merrick was a name spoken in whispers, a ghost with weight in the upper echelons of the Crown Cartel. A name from a past life Eli had crossed a continent to bury. The other cartel men, 3 of them with tattoos crawling up their necks, shifted uneasily. Their mission had been simple: grab the Angel's kid, send a message written in blood. Now their momentum was shattered by a secret. From the deep shadows at the edge of the truck yard, a figure resolved itself. He moved without sound, an older man in a charcoal wool coat that seemed too elegant for the gravel and grease. Victor. Eli's blood ran cold. He knew him, Marek's personal shadow, his cleaner. Victor's pale, assessing eyes swept the scene before settling on Eli like a pin through a butterfly. You, Victor said. His voice was quiet, almost pleasant, and that made it worse. You speak a name that has been retired. You know things that are not for the street. Eli said nothing. He forced his feet to stay rooted, keeping his own threadbare body between Victor's gaze and the shivering boy on the ground. Victor didn't look at his man. He looked only at Eli. Take the boy and come. It wasn't an offer. It was a transfer of custody. Eli had traded a quick, violent end for the slow, chilling grip of something worse. He moved stiffly, his joints aching with adrenaline and old bruises. He helped Leo up. The boy clutched Eli's torn jacket sleeve, his fingers like ice. They were led not to one of the waiting trucks, but to a black sedan idling in the mouth of an alley, its engine a soft purr. The rear door swung open, a dark mouth. The sedan's interior was a tomb of leather and lemon-scented cleaner. Leo huddled against the door, shaking silently. Victor sat in the front passenger seat, not speaking, not looking back. The city blurred past the tinted windows, streetlights streaking into ribbons of gold. They drove for 23 minutes, Eli counting each one, winding into the skeletal remains of the industrial district where the river smelled of rust and forgotten things. The car slid into a private garage beneath a warehouse. The heavy door rolled shut behind them, plunging them into a silence so complete Eli could hear the frantic beat of his own pulse in his ears. Out, Victor said. They were taken up a freight elevator and into a space that was less a room and more a concrete box. A metal desk, 2 chairs, a single bulb dangling from a wire. Victor dismissed the other men with a nod. The door clicked shut, The lock engaged with a sound like a bone breaking. Victor finally turned his full attention to Eli. Merrick will be intrigued. A gutter rat with a key to a locked door. How does a creature like you know that name? The real one. Eli's tongue felt thick. I heard it. Once. You did not just hear it. Victor took a slow step closer. You used it as a shield. The boy breathes tonight because of you. That means you have incurred a debt. The Crown collects its debts. But Merrick, you want to collect the story first. And you will give it to him. For 3 days, they were kept in a windowless storage room adjacent to the office. A cot, a bucket, a bottle of water twice a day. No one spoke to them. The only sounds are the distant groan of machinery and Leo's hitched, fearful breathing in the dark. Eli could feel the city's tension thickening, a pressure building like a boil about to burst. The Steel Angels would be turning the city inside out. They would be gathering. Their rage would be a living thing, searching for an outlet. On the morning of the 3rd day, the sound began. It started as a subsonic hum through the concrete floor, a vibration in the teeth. Then it clarified, deepened, multiplied, the rolling tectonic thunder of hundreds of motorcycle engines moving in unison. It was the sound of an approaching storm made of steel and rage. The door to their cell banged open. Victor stood there, his usual calm replaced by a sharp, alert tension. It seems your value has just been reassessed, he said, his eyes on Eli. Your new family is here. They were marched back up to the roof. The blast of cold air was a shock. The sight below was unbelievable. The sprawling warehouse complex was surrounded. Motorcycles were parked in razor-straight lines, blocking every access road, every alley. Men in leather cuts stood beside their machines, arms crossed, faces like carved stone. In the very center of the vast concrete yard, a perfect circle had been left empty. 900 Steel Angels, and now not a single engine ran. The silence they created was heavier, more threatening than the roar had been. From a silent army, a single man walked forward. He was built like a bull, with a beard of iron gray and a cut that bore the president's gavel. Razor. His eyes scanned the roof line, passing over Victor, dismissing the cartel guards, and anchoring on Eli with terrifying intensity. Victor shoved Eli forward to the parapet. A trade. Victor's voice echoed, too loud in the quiet. The sun for the stray. The stray has information my boss wants. President Razor didn't even look at Leo. His gaze remained locked on Eli, peeling him apart layer by layer. The stray, Razor's voice boomed, flat and hard. Used a word that made snakes like you flinch. He stood for my blood when he had nothing to gain. He took another step, his boot heels crunching on gravel. So I don't want to trade. I want to know why. Who is he that you fear his voice? Eli stood on the precipice, the wind cutting through his thin shirt. He was the question mark at the center of the standoff. The Crown wanted to mine his memory. The Steel Angels now needed to decipher his worth. Razor raised a hand. Behind him, the sea of angels parted instantly, creating a narrow path from the warehouse's main door directly to where he stood. Come down here, Razor commanded. It was not an invitation. It was a summons to judgment. Victor's hand clamped on Eli's shoulder, nails biting. Remember, he hissed, his breath hot in Eli's ear. The debt is to us. You speak to them, you die slower. Eli looked at Leo, held tightly by a cartel thug, his young face a mask of desperate hope. He looked down the impossible gauntlet, the narrow path lined with the silent, watching angels. He had spent a lifetime running to stay invisible, a ghost in his own life. He pried Victor's fingers off his shoulder, one by one. Then he turned, and without a word, walked toward the roof door. He didn't run. He didn't look back. His footsteps echoed in the stairwell, a steady, doomed rhythm. He pushed the heavy steel door open and stepped out into the circle of engines and eyes. The silence was so profound he could hear the rustle of leather as men shifted their weight. He walked the path. The weight of their stares was a physical pressure. He stopped 10 feet from President Razor, close enough to see the frost in the man's blue eyes. "The name," Razor said, his voice low but carrying to every ear. "What does it mean?" "Ili Svalovith." This was the point of no return. He lifted his chin and met the president's gaze. "Merrick isn't just crown," Eli said, his voice clear and steady in the freezing air. "He's the reason I'm a runaway." He took a sharp breath, the words leaving him forever. "He's my father." The confession didn't just hang in the air, it detonated. A shockwave of muted exclamations rolled through the angels. Razor's stern expression fractured, revealing pure, unguarded shock. Eli wasn't just a kid with a secret. He was the secret incarnate, the son of the king of their enemies. Razor's eyes blazed with sudden, brutal understanding. He looked from Eli up to the roof where Victor stood frozen, and a grim, triumphant smile touched his lips. He had not been offered a pawn. He had been handed a weapon. He turned his head and shouted up to Victor, his voice ringing with finality. "You tell Merrick he can keep his trade." "His son," Razor declared, throwing a thick arm around Eli's shoulders, pulling him firmly into the fold of angels, "now rides with me." The roar that erupted from 900 throats was deafening, a wave of sound that shook the very ground. It wasn't a cheer of welcome, but a savage, jubilant declaration of war. Eli, engulfed by the sound and the sudden crush of bodies, saw Victor's face, pale with rage, disappear from the roof's edge. He saw Leo break free and sprint toward his father, swallowed by the crowd, safe. Razor leaned down, his voice for Eli alone amidst the chaos. "Your old life is dead. You're an angel now. You fight for us. You belong to us. That's your shield." His grip tightened, not friendly but possessive. "In your cage." As the engines roared to life around him, a symphony of raw power, Eli understood. He was no longer a runaway. He was a prize, a provocation, a living, breathing declaration of war wearing a stolen leather cut. The thunder of the motorcycles was no longer a threat from outside. It was beneath him, around him, carrying him forward into a battle where his own father would be waiting on the other side. And as the massive formation began to roll out, a single angel broke from the ranks, steering his bike close. He was younger, with intense eyes, and he shoved a bundled leather jacket into Eli's arms. As Eli fumbled with it, a small, folded piece of paper fluttered from the folds and landed on the gas tank. Eli snatched it, unfolding it under the glare of the headlight. The handwriting was sharp, unfamiliar. It held only 5 words. "Your mother says hello, Eli." The note was a ghost's breath against his skin. The 5 words, "Your mother says hello, Eli," didn't feel like a greeting. They felt like a key turning in a lock deep inside his chest, a lock he'd forgotten existed. The world, a roaring chaos of engines and shouting men, seemed to mute into a dull, underwater hum. He stared at the sharp, angular handwriting, each letter a tiny blade. "Eyes forward, kid." The growl came from Razor, who had released him but now rode close beside him, a massive presence on a custom chrome Harley. The president's gaze was fixed on the road ahead, but his command was clear. Eli clumsily stuffed the note into his jeans pocket, the paper feeling like a live coal against his thigh. He fumbled with the leather jacket the young angel had given him. It was too big, the shoulders sagging, the heavy smell of oil and another man's sweat clinging to it. He pulled it on anyway. The weight was immense, like wearing a suit of armor he hadn't earned. They rode for an hour, a river of steel flowing out of the industrial graveyard and into the beating heart of the city's underworld. The Steel Angels compound wasn't a hidden clubhouse. It was a fortress. A sprawling, 3-story auto body shop called Sanctuary Customs took up a full city block, surrounded by a 20-foot chain-link fence crowned with razor wire. Graffiti-tagged murals of winged motorcycles covered the outer walls. As the iron gate rattled open, the procession rolled into a vast, concrete courtyard already filled with bikes and grim-faced men. The engines cut out one by one, the silence that followed ringing in Eli's ears. Every dismounting angel looked at him. The stares weren't curious. They were appraisals. He was a strange, sudden graft onto their family tree, and they were checking for disease. Razor grabbed Leo in a fierce, one-armed hug, then pushed him toward a group of older women who emerged from a side door, their faces lined with worry and relief. Without another glance at his son, Razor clamped a hand on the back of Eli's neck and steered him toward the main building. The touch wasn't guiding, it was claiming. They moved through a garage bay, a cathedral of machinery where engines hung from chains like gutted animals, and into a back office. The room was dominated by a scarred oak desk littered with motorcycle parts, maps, and a single, old photograph of a smiling woman with Leo's eyes. Razor shoved Eli into a wooden chair that creaked in protest, then rounded the desk, his bulk blocking the only door. For a long moment, Razor just looked at him. The president's eyes were the color of a winter sky, and they held no warmth. "Start talking," Razor said, his voice a low rumble. "Madek, your father, all of it." Eli's mouth was desert dry. He looked at the photograph of the woman. "Is that my wife? Gone?" "Not your business," Razor snapped, his knuckles whitening where they gripped the desk. "Your business is the poison in your blood. You're his son, his flesh. So why were you sleeping in gutters? Why did you save my boy?" The story was a barbed wire tangle in Eli's throat. He hadn't spoken it aloud in years, not even to himself. He focused on a grease stain on the concrete floor, his voice a flat, hollow thing. "My mother, her name was Anya. She worked for him, not in the cartel, in his legit businesses. Accounting. She thought he was a businessman." A bitter, sharp sound escaped Eli, almost a laugh. "She found out. She tried to leave to take me. He made an example of her. Not a public one, a private one. A lesson for me." He could still smell the sterile, lemony scent of the hallway outside their apartment. The silence when he came home from school. The way the bedroom door was slightly ajar. "He kept me after that," Eli continued, the words coming faster now, pushed out by a pressure he could no longer contain. "Not as a son, as a project. He had people teach me things. How to fight, how to watch people, how to disappear. He said I had to be useful to earn my place in his world." Eli finally looked up, meeting Razor's icy gaze. "I was 12. I ran on my 15th birthday. I've been running ever since. He doesn't send people after me. He just lets me run. I think he find it funny." Razor absorbed this, his expression unchanging. "And the name? Why did it work?" "Because Merrick isn't a name anyone uses," Eli whispered. "Not to his face. Not ever. It's a name he had before he became the Crown. To hear it shouted in the open, it's a threat. It means someone knows where the mask ends and the man begins." A heavy silence filled the room. Razor pushed off the desk and walked to a small, dirty window overlooking the yard. "So you're a ghost from his past. A walking, talking vulnerability." He turned back, a ruthless calculation in his eyes. "He'll want you back. Not out of love. To bury the loose end." "I know," Eli said. "And now he knows you're with me," Razor said, a slow, grim smile spreading. "Which means you've just painted a target on my back that's brighter than the sun. So you'd better be worth the trouble, kid. You'd better be the key to breaking him." Before Eli could respond, the office door burst open. The young angel from the ride, the one who'd given him the jacket, stood there, breathing hard. His eyes, a startling light green, darted from Razor to Eli. "Prez, we've got a problem at the West Gate." "What kind of problem?" Razor growled. "Not a fight. A delivery. A Crown courier. He dropped a package. He said it was for the new recruit. He was gone before we could grab him." A cold dread pooled in Eli's stomach. Razor's eyes locked onto his. Together, they strode out into the courtyard. A small, elegant white box sat on the oil-stained concrete, tied with a silver ribbon. It looked obscenely out of place. The gathered angels formed a wide, tense circle around it. "Open it," Razor ordered, nodding at Eli. Hands trembling, Eli crouched. The ribbons slithered away. He lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of black velvet, was a single, pristine motorcycle key. And beneath it, a photograph. The air left Eli's lungs in a rush. The photo was of a woman with kind eyes and faded blonde hair, sitting at a small cafe table somewhere sunny, a half-finished cup of coffee in front of her. It was his mother, but not the mother from his memories. This woman was older, her face lined with a piece he'd never seen her wear. She was alive. Scrawled on the back of the photo, in the same sharp handwriting from the note, were more words. A key for a key. Come home, and she stays in the sun. Stay with the angels, and the rain finds her. You have 24 hours. M. The world tilted. The concrete beneath his feet felt like shifting sand. The roaring in his ears returned, drowning out the muttered curses of the men around him. Merrick hadn't just killed his mother. He'd hidden her. All these years of running, of hunger and cold and fear. And she had been alive somewhere, thinking he was dead, or worse, that he'd abandoned her. Razor snatched the photo from his numb fingers, studied it, and his face darkened into a storm. This is a play. He's baiting you. She's alive. Eli choked out, the words a broken thing. And she's a lever. Razor barked, grabbing Eli's shoulder and forcing him to look away from the photo. He's showing you the prize to make you jump. If you go to him, you're both dead the second he has you. You know that. Eli didn't know. It was the oldest trick in his father's book. Dangle hope, then snatch it away with cruelty. But the image of her face, older, alive, it was a hook sunk deep into his soul. The young angel with the green eyes, who'd been staring at Eli with an unreadable intensity, spoke up quietly. We could find her. The photo has clues. The cafe, the plants. It's a trap within a trap, Razor countered, but his eyes were on the photo again, scanning for details. He'll be waiting wherever she is. The conflict tore through Eli, violent and paralyzing. The angels were a cage, but they were a cage facing his enemy. His father was offering a gilded leash and the ghost of his mother. Both were paths to destruction. Razor made the decision for him. He crumpled the photo in his fist. Nobody leaves. Nobody makes a move. We lock down. We think. He said 24 hours. Eli protested, a surge of desperate energy breaking through his shock. And he'll kill her in 23 just to prove a point if we act stupid. Razor roared, his voice echoing off the garage walls. You're mine now. Your problems are my problems. Your war is my war. We face it on my schedule. He pointed a thick finger at the green-eyed angel. Kale, you stick to him. He doesn't piss without you. The young angel, Kale, gave a sharp nod, his gaze never leaving Eli's face. The rest of the day passed in a suffocating blur. Eli was given a cot in a storage room filled with tire stacks. Kale sat silently in a chair by the door, cleaning a knife with methodical, patient strokes. The compound buzzed with tense activity, but Eli was trapped in a bubble of silent agony. The note in his pocket, the key in the box, his mother's face, they spun in his mind on a cruel loop. As night fell, the compound grew quieter. The low murmur of voices from the main hall faded. Kale's breathing evened out in the dark. He was asleep in the chair. Eli lay on his cot, staring at the ceiling, the crumpled photo now hidden under his pillow. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to find her, to try. It was a suicide mission, but the thought of her dying because he did nothing was a worse death. He waited until the deep hours of the night, then moved with the silence his father's men had drilled into him. He slid off the cot, his feet soundless on the concrete. He crept past the sleeping Kale, eased the door open, and slipped into the shadowy garage. Moonlight filtered through high, dirty windows, painting the skeletons of motorcycles in silver and blue. He moved toward a small side door he'd spotted earlier, a delivery entrance. His heart, was a frantic bird in his throat. He was almost there, his hand reaching for the rusted bolt. A figure melted from the deeper shadows beside a workbench, blocking his path. It was Kale. He wasn't sleepy. He was wide awake, his green eyes gleaming in the half-light. In his hand, the knife caught a sliver of moon. "I knew you'd try," Kale whispered, his voice devoid of judgment. Razor knew too. Eli's hope shattered. He braced for the attack, for the shout that would bring the entire compound down on him. But Kale didn't move. He didn't raise the knife. Instead, he reached into his own jacket and pulled out a set of motorcycle keys. He tossed them to Eli, who caught them on pure reflex. "Not that way," Kale said, nodding toward the bolted door. "They're watching it." He pointed his knife toward the far end of the garage, where a heavy canvas tarp was draped over something. The bike under the tarp. It's fast. It's untraceable. The West Gate guard will look the other way for exactly 60 seconds at 4 a.m. It's in 10 minutes. Eli started, utterkontuset. Why? Kale's face was a mask of cold sympathy. Because Razor won't move fast enough to save your mother. And because sometimes a bad choice is the only one you've got. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a thread of sound. "But you need to know something first. The note you got today? Your mother says hello." Eli nodded, frotsen. "I know who wrote it," Kale said, his eyes holding Eli's with terrifying intensity. "It wasn't your father." The words hung in the oily air. "It was mine." The words were a sucker punch to a place deeper than bone. "It was mine." Eli stood frozen in the moonlit garage, the cold keys biting into his palm. Kale's green eyes held him, unblinking, a silent storm of shared secrets. The roar of Eli's own thoughts deafened him. His mother alive, the key, the deadline, and now this. A new, more intimate betrayal. "Your father?" Eli finally breathed, the air feeling thin. Kale gave a single, sharp nod. His jaw was tight, a muscle feathering under the skin. Razor. He wrote the note. He had it delivered during the chaos. "Why?" The question was a plea. "To bind you to us," Kale said, his voice low and urgent. "To make you think the threat was from Merrick. To make you need our protection even more." He saw your face on that roof. He saw a weapon, but a skittish one. Fear of your father might make you run. Fear for your mother, that would make you fight. For him. The revelation rearranged the world with a sickening lurch. The note hadn't been a ghost from his past. It was a leash fashioned in the present. The relief that his father hadn't somehow found his mother was instantly swallowed by a new, more profound terror. Razor wasn't just his cage. He was his puppeteer. And the photo? The key? Eli asked, dreading the answer. Crown. That part's real. Razor just used their move to make his own. Kale glanced toward the silent compound. He's playing a deeper game. You're a piece in it. I'm a piece in it. My father sees loyalty as something you hammer into shape. The weight of it threatened to crush Eli. He was trapped between two ruthless fathers, each trying to forge him into a blade for the other's heart. Why are you telling me? Ili vispirith. For the first time, Kale's cold mask slipped. A flicker of raw, unvarnished pain. Because I remember what it's like to be a tool in his hands. Because the woman in that photo doesn't deserve to be a pawn. And because if you're going to run, you should run knowing exactly what you're running from. He checked a heavy, grease-stained watch on his wrist. 4 minutes to the gate. Go now, or live the rest of your life as a weapon in someone else's war. The choice was an illusion, and they both knew it. Staying was surrender. Leaving was a race into a trap. But it was a race toward his mother. Eli moved. He shoved the keys in his pocket and sprinted to the far end of the garage. He yanked the canvas tarp, sending up a cloud of dust. Underneath wasn't a showy chopper, but a sleek, matte black sport bike, a ghost of a machine. He swung a leg over, the engine coming to life with a suppressed, eager growl that seemed too loud in the sleeping fortress. Kale was already gone, vanished back into the shadows. Eli twisted the throttle, and aimed the bike at the reinforced roll-up door of the delivery bay. He hit a small, wired remote dangling from nail. With a shuddering groan, the door began to climb. He ducked low as soon as there was space, the bike shooting out into the cold night like a bullet from a chamber. He didn't look back. He focused on the west gate. As he approached, the lone guard there, a hulking silhouette, deliberately turned his back, lighting a cigarette and staring up at the stars. The 60-second window. Eli blasted through the open gate and onto the empty city streets. The wind was a freezing slap, cutting through the stolen jacket. He had no plan, no destination, just a photo in his mind and the key in the box. He found himself heading toward the last place he'd felt anything like safety, the derelict riverfront district where he'd slept before the world exploded. An hour later, he hid the bike in the shell of a collapsed warehouse and climbed to his old nest, a dry loft space above a rusted conveyor belt. In the gray pre-dawn light, he smoothed out the crumpled photo on his knee. His mother's face, the cafe, a potted bougainvillea, vibrant pink, a partially visible sign, Olinas, Mediterranean-style tiles. It was a place with sun, somewhere far from this rain-soaked city, a place Merrick had hidden her to keep her as a permanent threat, a place Razor would now use as bait. He was studying the background, searching for any other clue, a license plate, a street sign, when a new sound pierced the morning quiet. Not engines, not sirens, a single, ringing phone. The sound came from below, echoing in the vast, empty space. Eli crept to the edge of the loft and peered down. On a pile of rubble, next to a discarded Crown Energy drink can, a brand-new, cheap burner phone was lit up, vibrating in circles. His blood turned to ice. They'd found him, or they'd known he'd come here. The ringing was insistent, a digital scream in the silence. He had no choice. He climbed down, every sense screaming danger, and picked up the hot, plastic device. He pressed answer, held it to his ear. No one spoke at first. He could hear breathing, calm, measured. Then a voice. It wasn't the cold, furious voice from the radio. This was different, older, weary. It was a voice he heard in his worst dreams and his most fragile, forgotten memories. Hello, Elijah. The use of his full name sent a physical shock through him. He hadn't been called that since he was a child. Where is she? Eli demanded, his voice cracking. Safe. For now. Marek's tone was almost conversational. You've been busy, making new friends, declaring new loyalties. It's disappointing. I have no loyalty to you. You have my blood, Marek replied, a hint of steel entering the weariness. That is the only loyalty that matters. The bikers have played their card. The false note. Did you think I wouldn't know? Razor always was a blunt instrument. No satellite. Eli's grip tightened on the phone. He knew nothing. He was a leaf between two hurricanes. The key I sent opens a locker at the Greyhound terminal, Merrick continued. Inside is a ticket, a phone, a new life, one where you and your mother can be together, away from all this. And the price. Eli visperet. You come to me. Now, you walk into the lobby of the Atrium Hotel downtown. You come alone, and you come unarmed. You do this, and the ticket becomes real. She boards a bus to nowhere, and you and I, we settle our family business. It was the same offer, just stripped of pretense. Himself for her. How do I know you'll let her go? You don't, Merrick said simply. You have faith, or you stay with the angels, and I call the man who watches her house, and he finishes the job I should have done years ago. You have 1 hour, Elijah. The clock started when you answered this phone. The line went dead. Eli stood in the crumbling warehouse, the silence now a physical weight. The burner phone screen flashed with a countdown timer, 59:47, 59:46. He had the key. He could go to the terminal, get the ticket, maybe find a clue to her location on the new phone. He could run, try to find her himself, or he could walk into the Atrium Hotel and surrender. Both were traps. One offered a glimmer of hope for her. The other promised only his own end. Driven by a despairing instinct, he took the bike and raced to the Greyhound station. He found the locker. The key turned. Inside was a sealed envelope. He tore it open. A one-way ticket to a coastal city 2,000 miles away, booked in the name Anya Vance. A newer burner phone, and a single Polaroid photo, fresh and glossy. It showed his mother in the same cafe, but this time her face was turned toward the window, her expression confused, worried. A man in a dark jacket sat at the table next to hers, his back to the camera. A guard. Proof of life and proof of threat. The new phone rang instantly. "Do you believe me now?" Marek's voice asked. Eli closed his eyes. "Yes." The hotel, Elijah. 53 minutes. The call ended. Eli stood in the grimy bus terminal, the ticket to freedom in one hand, the photo of his captive mother in the other. The angel's betrayal was a knife in his back. His father's offer was a guillotine. He made his choice. He left the bike. He walked the 16 blocks to the gleaming glass tower of the Atrium Hotel, the morning sun glaring off its windows like 1,000 watching eyes. He felt naked, empty. He pushed through the revolving doors into the vast, marble lobby, a place of quiet luxury and soft music. He stood there waiting. For 5 minutes, nothing happened. Then a sleek, elevator door pinged open on the far side of the lobby. Not one, but 2 men stepped out. Victor, Marek's cleaner, his expression neutral. And beside him, his hand clamped firmly on the arm of a pale, terrified woman with faded blonde hair. It was his mother. She was here, not in a sunny cafe 2,000 miles away. She was in the city, in a hotel. Marek had never let her go. The ticket, the photo, it was all theater. "Mom," the word was a broken thing. Her eyes found his across the lobby, widening in stunned, horrified recognition. "Elijah." Victor began to walk her toward him, a cruel parody of a reunion. Eli took a step forward, a sob of rage and relief choking him. Then, from the street outside, came a sound that shattered the hotel's quiet. The deafening, unified roar of hundreds of motorcycle engines, closing in fast. Razor hadn't let him go. He'd followed him. Victor's head snapped toward the sound. He didn't panic. He smiled. He pulled a pistol from inside his coat, not aiming at Eli, but pressing it to Anya's temple, right there in the bright public lobby. He looked directly at Eli, his voice cutting through the growing roar. "Your father says hello." The world narrowed to a single, horrifying point. The cold circle of the pistol's muzzle pressed against his mother's temple. The roar of the steel angel's engines outside was a tidal wave of sound, shaking the hotel's glass doors, but inside the marble lobby, a frozen, silent tableau held. "Elijah," his mother whispered, her voice a fragile thread. Her eyes, the same shade of hazel as his own, were wide not with fear for herself, but with a heartbreak so profound it stole Eli's breath. She was seeing the boy she lost, now standing in the crossfire of a war. "Let her go, Victor," Eli said, his voice unervingly calm. It was the voice Marek's trainers had taught him, the one that hid the screaming inside. "You have me. The trade is me for her." That was the deal. Victor's polite smile didn't waver. The deal changed the moment Razor's circus arrived. Now it's a negotiation. His eyes flicked toward the entrance. Through the glass, the first of the black-clad angels was dismounting, a wall of leather and fury forming on the sidewalk. At their center was Razor, his face a granite mask of rage. The hotel's few guests and staff were scattering, hiding behind potted palms and the reception desk. "You pull that trigger," Eli said, taking a slow, deliberate step forward, "and you die 5 seconds later. Razor will turn this lobby into a tomb for you. And your mother will still be dead," Victor replied smoothly. "A tragic collateral casualty. Marek will be inconvenienced, but he'll have the satisfaction of knowing you watched it happen." that you chose the wrong side. It was a checkmate with a human heart as the chess piece. Eli's mind, trained for escape, for survival, scrabbled for a third option. There was none. He was a weapon without a target, a key that fit two deadly locks. The main doors burst open. Razor strode in, flanked by Kale and a half-dozen senior angels, their boots echoing on the marble. They fanned out, a semicircle of contained violence facing Victor. The air grew thick, charged with the promise of slaughter. Victor, Razor growled, the word like grinding stones. You're my city, holding a woman. You got about 3 seconds to put the gun down before we paint these nice walls with your insides. Victor impossibly seemed relaxed. President Razor. So predictable. You followed the boy. You always were led by your temper, not your brain. He adjusted his grip on Anya, who flinched. This ends one of two ways. You all walk out, leave the boy and his mother to us, and the Crown considers this a minor border skirmish. Or you force my hand, and I give Merrick the one thing he's always wanted. And what's that? Razor spat. His son's undying hatred for you. Victor said softly, his eyes on Eli. You will have caused his mother's death. He will spend every day of his life, what little he is left of it, destroying you and everything you love. Merrick won't have to lift a finger. Your own weapon will turn on you. The genius of the move was its cruelty. It wasn't just about killing Anya. It was about poisoning Eli's soul, making him a plague upon the angels from within. Razor saw it. His eyes darted to Eli, and for a fraction of a second, the president's certainty wavered. He had wanted a weapon, but this was a weapon that could explode in his hands. In that sliver of hesitation, Eli saw his opening. It wasn't a plan. It was a suicide run. He looked past Victor's gun, directly into his mother's eyes. He saw the love there, the years of loss, and a fierce, sudden clarity. She gave him an almost imperceptible nod. She understood. She was ready. He spoke, not to Victor, not to Razor, but to her. I'm sorry I ran, Mom. I'm sorry I left you with him. Then he moved. He didn't charge Victor. He dropped low and lunged forward, not at the gun, but at his mother's legs, tackling her below the knees. The gunshot was monstrously loud in the enclosed space. Eli felt the heat of the muzzle flash, heard the round snap past his ear and shatter a mirror behind them. He and his mother crashed to the cold marble floor in a tangle. He rolled, covering her body with his own. Chaos erupted. Razor bellowed, "Get them!" Kale was already moving, not toward Victor, but in a diagonal sprint, putting himself between the fallen pair and the rest of Victor's men, who were now emerging from the elevator and stairwell doors. Victor, off balance from the sudden movement, tried to reacquire his target. He never got the chance. Razor didn't go for a gun. He crossed the 10 feet of space like a charging bull. He didn't throw a punch. He led with his shoulder, a full tackle driven by a lifetime of street war fury, and drove Victor back into the solid marble reception desk. The impact made a sickening, wet crunch. Victor's gun skittered across the floor. He slumped dazed. The lobby became a brutal, close-quarters brawl. Angels and crowned soldiers clashed. It was not a gunfight. It was something more primal. Fists, knives, boots, the grunts of impact, the crack of bone. The luxurious space was transformed into a cage of violence. Eli scrambled to his knees, pulling his mother up. "We have to go. Now." Her hands gripped his face, her touch both foreign and achingly familiar. "Elijah," she sobbed. "No time." He hauled her toward a service corridor he'd spotted, dragging her away from melee. Kale saw them, broke away from a fight, and covered their retreat, his face a mask of fierce concentration. They stumbled down a hallway lined with laundry carts, the sounds of the battle fading behind them. Eli pushed through a heavy door marked Fire Exit, and they spilled out into a blindingly bright alley filled with dumpsters. The roar of the main fight was now a muffled storm from the front of the building. Gasping, they leaned against the brick wall. His mother touched the side of his head, her fingers coming away red from the graze of the bullet. "You're hurt." "It's nothing," he said, his eyes on Cale, who stood guard at the alley's mouth, a bloody knife in his hand. "Why?" Eli asked him. "Why cover us?" Cale looked back, his green eyes intense. "I told you. I remember what it's like." He nodded toward Anya. "Get her out of the city. The safe house at 221 Riverbend. It's clean. Go. Now. Razor will kill you for this," Eli said. A ghost of a smile touched Cale's lips. "Maybe, but it'll be my choice, not his. Go." Eli didn't hesitate. He took his mother's hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong, and they ran. He led her through a maze of back streets, his old runaway instincts guiding him, until they found a rusted, forgotten sedan he knew how to hotwire. 5 minutes later, they were moving, leaving the sounds of the Atrium Hotel far behind. They drove in silence for an hour, following Cale's directions to a quiet, wooded area north of the city. The safe house was a modest, unremarkable cabin. Inside, it was sparse but secure. Only when the door was locked and bolted behind them did the dam break. His mother sank onto a worn sofa and wept, great, heaving sobs of 15 years of fear and grief. Eli stood frozen, watching, the emotional armor he'd built over a lifetime cracking. He knelt before her, unsure what to do. She pulled him in her arms, and he buried his face in her shoulder, the scent of her, jasmine and warmth, unlocking a flood of memories and a pain so sharp it was almost sweet. Later, as dusk painted the sky in bruised purples and reds, they sat at the small kitchen table. She told him of the years in a gilded cage, moved from place to place, always watched, told he was dead or a traitor. He told her the streets, the cold, the hunger, the night he saved Leo. "You became a good man," she said, her hand covering his. "In spite of him. Because of me, I hope." He couldn't speak. He just held her hand. The peace was shattered by the sound of a single motorcycle approaching. Eli was on his feet instantly, a knife in his hand. He peered through the window. It was Razor. Alone. He dismounted, moving stiffly. He had a fresh cut over his eye, and his knuckles were raw meat. He walked to the door and knocked, just once. Eli opened it, standing in the doorway, blocking his mother from view. Razor looked past him, then into Eli's eyes. The president's fury was gone, replaced by a deep, weary calculation. Victor's dead. The crown men are scattered. It was a message they'll understand. "What do you want?" Eli asked, his voice flat. "You," Razor said. "A deal was struck. You ride with me." That was the proclamation. My men heard it. The city heard it. If you disappear now, I look weak. The crown sees division. They strike again. "I'm done being your weapon," Eli said. "I'm not asking for a weapon," Razor said. And for the first time, there was a sliver of something like respect in his tone. "I'm offering a position, not as a soldier, as a liaison. You know the crown mind. You have a stake in this fight they can't match." He glanced into the cabin again. "She stays here, under my protection, the best protection in this territory. No one will find her. No one will touch her. You have my word." "Your word?" Eli's laugh was bitter. "My word," Razor repeated, his gaze unwavering, backed by the full force of the Steel Angels. "She will live in the sun, Eli. Not as bait, as a mother. But you have to be the face that guarantees it. You stand with us. Publicly." It was another cage, but this one had an open door for her. It was a choice between two freedoms, his or hers. From behind him, his mother's voice, clear and strong, spoke. "Do it, Elijah." He turned. She stood there, her face serene. "He's offering you a chance to build something. To protect. Not just me. Yourself. A place. It's more than running. It's more than hiding." Eli looked from his mother's hopeful, tear-streaked face to Razor's grim, expectant one. He thought of Cale, choosing his own path in the alley. He thought of Leo, safe because of choice he'd made. He wasn't a runaway boy anymore. He was a young man with a debt to pay and a family to shield. He turned back to Razor and gave a single, slow nod. On one condition, Eli said, Kale faces no punishment for helping us. Razor's eyes narrowed. Then he grunted, a sound of concession. He'll be your lieutenant. Your responsibility. His disobedience becomes yours. It was a burden, but it was a shared one. 2 weeks later, under a cold, clear sky, a prospecting ceremony was held in the Angels' compound. There were no cheers, but a solemn, watchful silence. Eli stood before the assembled club, wearing a prospect's cut. No full patch yet, but the winged motorcycle emblem of the Steel Angels was on his back. He was not their brother. Not yet. He was their pledge, their bridge, their sharp, new tool with a will of his own. Razor stood before him, holding the cut. You protect what's ours. We protect what's yours. That's the law. You live by it. You die by it. Eli took the cut and put it on. The leather was heavy, but it felt different this time. It wasn't a stolen skin. It was chosen armor. Across the yard, leaning against his bike, Kale watched, his expression unreadable. He gave Eli a slight, acknowledging nod. From the roof of the main building, unseen by the crowd below, Eli's mother watched, a blanket around her shoulders. She was not smiling, but her eyes were dry and clear. For the first time in 15 years, she knew where her son was. He was not safe, but he was not alone. He was home. As the engines revved in a unified, thunderous salute, Eli looked out at the sea of hard, unforgiving faces. He had traded the endless, lonely road for a dangerous, anchored belonging. The war with the crown was not over. It had just found a new, personal front line. Merrick was still out there. The debt of blood was unpaid. But as the sound of the engines filled the air, Eli felt something unfamiliar settle in his chest. It wasn't peace. It was purpose. He was no longer a ghost. He was a promise. A promise wrapped in leather, riding into a storm of his own making, with his mother's face finally safe as the compass in his heart. The road ahead was paved with violence and vengeance. But for the first time, he was not running down it. He was riding.